And we're live. Here we go. Welcome to session at the National Sports Forum Winter Summit. I lead up the customer success team at FanX, and we specialize in features that fans can play anytime, anywhere on their mobile. Just for this session and the title, how interactivity continues to engage, drive sponsorship revenue at home, in venue, and everywhere. And really came from a conversation I was having with an NCAA team a few months ago, where it was a Monday, and we were chatting about their upcoming game that weekend. Still didn't know like whether they would have fans in the building at that time, days away, and if they did, 25%, was it 50%? And even if they could have fans, they couldn't do promotions or activations on the field due to health restrictions. And so relying on interactive, not just for their audience at home, but even when they came back to the coming back to the venue, relying on interactive as a way to engage with fans, contesting, get them involved, keep them close to the team, and partnership inventory. And so I want to provide a few examples. We brought a few our partners on here to share how they've been using interactive to keep fans and sponsors. And but now that interactivity too has become so quintessential, we also want to take a bit of a deeper dive too and look at, okay, how can we get more meaningful our participation numbers, and then what does it look like to sell interactive sponsors, and how can we become more efficient at that as well. I'll try and keep an eye in question or in the chat channel on the session page. So feel free to, and I'll try and relay those to our esteemed panel, which I want to introduce now. And I'm clockwise on my screen. So first we have John McCulley. John is the executive director at GJ. He spent his entire 22-year career in sports for Hockey News. He was employee 60 at MLB Advanced Media while he was working at the Blue. Then I learned, John, just when you sent me this brief bio. And he spent 14 years at Sports and Entertainment, running all the customer-facing platforms for their multitude of brands, Toronto Maple Leafs and Toronto Raptors. And he spent the last relationships with sports startups and creating digital and content strategy for brands like NBA Canada, the Belleville Senators, and the Canadian Hockey League. It's written in my framework here to now segue to him with, man, you getting old. But that
absolutely getting old. Gonna have to rewrite that bio soon.
Yeah, but that's not. I wanted to reflect too because that's not my character to say. I hope that I have half the career in sports that you've had. That's impressive.
Well, you're well on your way. Well on your way.
And after 5 years on the away from the team side, right? We're not so bad on the vendor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. We're at a really crazy point in time where there's all these different, to your point earlier, different stipulations that we're under, but engagement still is still the same, and we need to figure out ways to do it. And we've got two other folks here that are really doing it still at the team level, and we enjoy working with them and helping them out. And hopefully we can chit chat a little bit more about the different types of engagement we need to do, because I'm a big believer in audiences aren't always going to be set into one type of interaction. Live prediction and gaming is super hot, but lots of people just like to come in and pick 3-2.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, moving or clockwise down, I want to introduce Steve Edgar, who's the manager game presentation at Calgary Entertainment Corporation since returning to Calgary in 2016 from MLSE, where him and John overlapped for a brief period. So this is somewhat of a reunion here on this. But since returning to Calgary, Steve has presided over all production and direction of and Calgary Hitmen game presentation at the Scotiabank Saddledome, and also role in helping Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation with their other brands like the Calgary X and Calgary Stampeders, as well as their events department. And we were reflecting in the room beforehand. The Flames have been one of Fanex's longest standing clients, going on 7 years. And you were actually remembering, Steve, it was what, 2011 when you first chatted with?
Yeah, it was almost 10 years when we first chatted. So going back a long time, and the partnership has done nothing but grow, and excited to talk more about it here this morning and what we're working on and what we're doing.
So I got to get more into the interactive. What's it been like to put on a show, a production for just the and no fans?
It's been interesting, a learning experience to say the least. I guess I'll start just philosophically. We're so used to having everyone in one place in the building, whether it's fans, sponsors, the hockey team, management, our executive. So now our stakeholders are kind of spread out. We've got our players in the building, we've got our fans at home. So we've had to branch out and kind of put different irons in the fire in different areas of our business, and transition what used to just be in game is now going out on different mediums to our fans. So that's kind of from a content perspective, interactive perspective. We've got what we're doing on our Venue app with the FanX platform. We're working with our broadcaster to bring things we are doing in the building onto our broadcast, using our video board, our different screens in the building, almost as a set or production piece for them that they can utilize. And then beyond that, we're still working very closely with our hockey ops department and our team to give them whatever they need in the building to give them some sort of home ice or competitive advantage in absence of fans. So that's kind of how it's changed philosophically. And audio, this is the one area that I think has changed a lot. We've got artificial crowd noise. So for the first time, we're the crowd and we can dictate the crowd. So that presents a lot of issues philosophically. How far do we take it? Those types of things. And just our sound system. So if you're a player, you imagine you're on the ice, you're used to having the sound come from all around you, right? From fans, from everything at you. Well, now our speakers are above you, the fans are above you, coming down at you. So how does that change the experience for the player? How do we alter our systems in the building to make sure that environment is as close to normal for the players, for everyone involved in the game? So those are some of the things we've had to adapt and change beyond where our audiences are. And it's been really interesting and exciting. So here's hoping we don't have to do it for long. I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating look into that role, and I look forward to diving the interactive side specifically. Finally, on our panel, last but not least, Brian Shield. And thanks for joining us. Brian is the Vice President, Information Technology for the Boston Red and Fenway Sports. He leads the technology team on all phases of Red Sox IT, from creating a compelling digital fan experience at Fenway Park to enable the front office and baseball operations environment. And most notably here, and his IT team at the Red Sox can be credited with actually creating their own mobile bingo game that they've been using over the past few years. And I was reflecting, it was probably about 2 years ago now, Brian, that we met at another conference and were sharing what X has been doing, and you were explaining what you'd been doing with bingo. And we've partnered, we've brought the Red Sox bingo platform to the FanX platform, and we're making it available to other sports teams, not just across base. And in fact, Steve and the Flames will be piloting it this season in the base. But now that we are working together and we are partnering, I'm interested, Brian, I decided to dive into mobile engagement 3 or 4 years. Why not call up a FanX or another player in the space? You built it yourself, which is vicious, and I really admire that.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it. So thank you for having me. A lot of my background is sort of software engineering and product engineering as well. So I spent 13 years before the Red Sox running technology at the Weather Channel. So we spent a lot of time, obviously, with mobile apps and websites and a lot of other digital capabilities. And I think we work off the MLB Ballpark platform that's used in baseball. And so some of the development, we wanted to basically be innovative and do whatever we could. And so MLB kind of has the ability to kind of extend the functionality outside of the product. And so for us, Bingo has been one application that we've had out there now for 4+ seasons. We've also do a fair amount with augmented reality, some VR, and we continue to add to it with kind of some new AR chatbot features and things like that. So, we kind of see ourselves as trying to be innovators in the space. And as a result of it, I think it's opened a lot of doors, not just to relationships like we're describing, but also in terms of new capabilities that we're excited about kind of enabling with fans. Because I think on some level, we do partner, where appropriate, but I also think that we supplement and we kind of know our fans the best ultimately. And so if we can kind of do something that we think is cost effective and rewarding, then we'll do it ourselves and maybe look for partners, in terms of where we might be able to kind of, broaden the horizon a bit.
So what is exciting you about partnering with a group like FanX to expand what you're doing with and Interactive?
Well, I mean, we're a single club. I mean, we, Fenway Sports Group, owns, the Red Sox original sports network, NESN and Roush Fenway Racing. We have a half stake in, and as well as Liverpool football, and so we have a very sort of heavy sports focus, and but ultimately, our intent is to be innovative, not necessarily to be the support arm, for everything. It's one thing to kind of, create and design and sort of develop solutions. It's another thing to kind of support those on a broad scale, night after night, across, everything from Calgary to Florida to someplace in Europe, and that's way outside of our purview and something that we don't aspire to do ourselves. So finding partners who can innovate and complement, is really kind of what we're all about. I think we found a nice niche with you folks at FanX, and and that's a great partnership. And so to me, it's kind of finding people who sort of complement your style and sort of your vision.
Yeah, we're excited to continue rolling out the Bingo platform and working together as well. I'm going to bounce back to Steve here and maybe dive just a little bit deeper into Interactive and how that's evolved, because it really fell more under your jurisdiction, obviously, in the game presentation environment when you were using it as a tool, as another channel to engage your fans at events during downtimes and stoppages in play. But now, since you've moved to, first the return to play in the bubble and now back at home, but without fans, how has what you're doing with Interactive evolved now into sort of playing anywhere, anytime?
So as you mentioned, COVID and the pandemic has brought about a lot of increase in how we're engaging with our fans and sped up, I think, mobile interactive gaming from just an in-venue activation to out of venue, more specifically, obviously, because our fans can't attend games currently. So what used to be more of, I guess, a passive engagement in building where we're putting it up in breaks of play and fans are playing along in the building, they're engaged so many ways throughout the game, whether that's what we're doing in timeouts, the play itself, what they're doing on the concourse. There's so many things to grab their attention. So it was just one piece of that. Well, now the mobile interaction has become our only device to really engage our fans with contesting outside of social media, but with interactive contesting and bringing our show out of the building so they can still consume it. So what used to be more simple trivia-based contesting, which we were doing in the bubble, which we were doing prior to the pandemic, has now turned more predictive. And it's perfect timing for this predictive gaming rise, because fans are now getting that. They're getting more involved in the game while not being at the game, because they have a vested interest in outcomes throughout the game. So that's kind of how it's evolved. And the one way we are really, we've dived into predictive gaming is our Score 4 concept, which in its simplest form is 4 questions that have a predictive nature to them. We run this for every home game, along with our check-in to win currently on our platform. So the Score 4 is built to give fans that engagement and that ability to kind of have a vested interest or a dog in the fight in the outcome of the game, whether it's, will this player score 2 goals? Will our goalie faced more than 25 shots, which in the last few games he has, unfortunately. And those types of things, so that fans are encouraged more to watch the duration of the game and they're engaged fully in what is going on. The other item I just want to mention with Score 4 and what we've found in this predictive gaming is traditionally we've been very white collar in terms of our willingness to kind of be edgy. And I'm not saying any of this is edgy, but the writing and the gentleman, Austin, at our company who does most of the content creation for this, he's really been a bit more casual with a lot of the question writing. And I think fans appreciate that. It's kind of a fun thing to go in, and some of it might be funny, some of it might not be, but just that casual nature of the content, I think gives it a bit more, people are more inclined to engage and maybe go back, and we're enjoying that. We're having fun and using a lot of more slang terms in the questions, just to cater to maybe a different demographics, and we're just trying to be a bit more casual with it in that regard. And maybe casual is the wrong word. We're not loose and making mistakes. It's just a bit more fun.
Yeah, you're injecting some of your brand personality, maybe that you've used in social or other places, into what you're doing with interactive as
Exactly.
well. Yeah, it's been a nice flavor. I've enjoyed playing with. Sorry, do you want to finish off there, Steve?
Oh, I was just gonna say we've had 7 home games now, and we only do this for home games. Road games, we're just doing a simple check-in to win. But we've seen an increase from our first game, our home opener. Tripled our participation with this predictive gaming, which has been the sharpest rise in participation and engagement of anything we've done through the platform. So I think what it shows is that predictive gaming and gaming where fans they're not just interested in the game because they're a fan of the team and they want the team to win. They're always thinking about, they've placed their little predictions down and want to see the outcome. So I think that engagement number has shown that it's working and trending really high in growing a database and growing users.
That's fantastic to hear, and it just shows, a big part of growing an audience, and we'll get into that more a little bit later, but is just consistent execution, right? Like you said, you've done 7 events now. That's 7 times where it's been promoted through your marketing plan, through social, through the newsletter, through push. And so you're conditioning the audience to now interact with their mobile device in a different way around the live event. They were used to doing it in more of an in-venue environment. Now they're adapting to at home. So it's great to hear that that's taking off. I want to go to John now, because John and I have had great discussions on prediction, because it is such a hot topic as a precursor to sports gambling, but also just free to play. Prediction is such a prominent interactive concept right now, and we've talked about real time versus what I'm going to refer to as open prediction. And what Steve is demoing here with Score 4 is, I'm going to refer to it as more open, where it's 4 questions that are pre-configured and customized on the team side, and they're open to the day of the game, and the fan can participate in any time leading up to that event. Whereas real time prediction, we would see more, during the event, it's every 30 seconds or every 5 minutes, there's questions relating to the event. And John, I just wanted to get your take. You're working with many brands on the mobile side. Open prediction versus real time. For you, you were saying it starts with understanding your audience goals.
Yeah, I mean, and your sponsorship goals. I think that each of those concepts, have their own warrants, and it's really important to understand what your sponsor wants to get out of the engagement. Are you looking to generate a list of 10,000 players that can do a test drive, with an email down the road, that you send an email out to 200 of those folks? Are you really just looking to grow audience? Is it a second screen experience? All of these questions need to be asked based on the type of interaction you want to do. And I think they accomplish different goals, and that's what building a digital ecosystem, to me is all about, is having, different tools in your tool belt for you to be able to accomplish the goals of your sponsors, accomplish the goals of your data collection, accomplish the goals of your audience growth. And they're, Steve talked about 10 years ago, and I'm sure Brian as well, like, pick 3 and pick 4 and that sort of thing is not, trivia, that's not a new concept in sports. It's been around forever. It's just how we're doing it. And we're extending it beyond the building now. But I want to combine the building too. When things get back to normal, that whole audience, back in the, on the team side, we certainly struggled when we would launch one game and think that it was going to blow up and be the next, the next Jeopardy. But it doesn't normally happen that way. You need a combined strategy of multiple engagements to create an audience and drive them all together and create value for your sponsors that way.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that again when we chat about the arcade or game center concept that we're starting to see a lot of teams adopt. My take on prediction is that this sort of open model where it's open during the day, or if we're thinking about an NFL or NCAA football space where it's one game a week, questions open during the week, you're casting a wider net than when it's real time, because real time is going to engage that more niche hyper fan, right? And so, like John mentioned, if your goal is you're trying to drive player registrations or leads for a particular partner, you're going to want to cast more of a wider net and appeal to a longer tail of your fan base. And sometimes, if you're prompting them with questions every 30 seconds or every 15 minutes even, that can start to become more of a primary screen experience instead of a second screen experience, in my opinion. And I know Steve and Brian, feel free to jump in on prediction, and we'll get to bingo, which I believe is actually a nice happy medium. But Steve, you were saying like there's a time and place for it, right? Like maybe the Battle of Alberta versus Edmonton on a Saturday night. There's going to be more attention and desire for it. But for the most part, this is the successful route for you.
Yeah, I think that detailed level of gaming, where if you're saying every 5 minutes or every 30 seconds, it requires the user and the fan to be attentive the whole game, to not only the broadcast, but their phone or their second screen. So it is a unique fan. And I also believe that level of prediction is better suited for bigger events, say a Super Bowl or an All-Star game or a Winter Classic or Heritage Classic or a playoff game or whatever it is, to get consistent buy-in for that intense of predictive gaming. I think you'll cap out at a certain point on a segment of fans, which is also fine, but it doesn't have the growth potential, I think, that maybe something like wider predictive gaming does in this sense.
Yeah, and I think on Steve's point and John's, I think the other thing that's really important is, and I know for our ownership group and senior leadership, like success isn't someone's at the ballpark staring at their digital device the entire time. That is not a measure of success. I mean, success, I think, for all of us is that you're creating sort of a complementary or a supplementary experience for the fan, that whether you're, creating some fan amenity or entertainment or, infotainment in certain cases, I think those are the kinds of things that ultimately kind of went out. And predictive's interesting because I think and I think the other thing that's a little bit different is I think we're all starting to think now, I mean, our CEO, Sam Kennedy, was fond of saying that, sort of the game kind of begins when someone leaves their driveway and it ends when they get home. And so I think the other thing that we're all looking at now is we have also a much broader lens than we used to, right? It used to kind of be when you got to the ballpark or you got to the rink, and you're very kind of focused on that. Now I think we think of it a little bit more as, there's pregame, there's, I think oftentimes now coming to our when you do come, it's, you're more like coming to an event, right? But you're also coming to a venue with multiple opportunities, whether it's restaurants or other sort of, related sort of complementary kind of services and things. And then there's sort of like, post game at the end of it. And so I think it creates opportunities for us to kind of create I think a deeper and a broader kind of touch point back to fans. that historically I think we sort of are a little bit more narrow-minded, I guess, in our sort of thinking.
And I want to jump to bingo because I do, like I said, I do believe it's a happy medium between open and real time prediction, because it is ongoing with the game, but it's not something where if a fan is, not on their device, they're tuned into the game or they're distracted somewhere else, that for 2 or 3 innings they haven't lost out on any points. They can come back, they can view their bingo game board, and they can see, flashing tiles for plays or outcomes that have happened, and they can keep up with it. So it still requires a little bit more of an immersive and an immersive engagement. Like, it's not something you just open and at the end of the night you have bingo or you don't. It's something that requires you to play along with it. But it's not something where you're necessarily missing out or you've lost out on points because you haven't looked at your phone in 30 minutes. So that's where this happy medium comes from. And I think it's a great game, Brian, and I know that you're excited because you were telling me what this move for mandatory or enforced mobile ticketing will mean for your bingo game.
Yeah, so maybe a quick comment first. The the other thing that we liked about bingo, and that gets at its genesis, is that every square effectively, and it's kind of, everyone has a unique board, but every square, also tells you the play, right? So and it gives you like, what is that play? So not everybody coming to a baseball game understands what a double, what a triple is, or what a double play is. Or balk or something that you use less frequently, and things like that. And whether it's baseball or hockey or football for that matter, we kind of saw this as a form of sort of, combining sort of some information with some education, especially for younger audiences and things like that. So we saw this as a way to kind of help sort of cultivate a closer relationship with probably younger demographics and things like that. And we feel pretty successful about doing that as well. What I was referring to relative to this season is that we'll be, for the first time in our history, 100% digital ticketing. And so what that also does is it dramatically broadens the number of potential players, right? So now all of a sudden you go from, in our world in the past, and it depends how you measure digital, but we might have had 25% of people using, a mobile device to 100. Gives us lots of opportunities to kind of broaden our reach and hopefully kind of create, a hook for those people as well, that they find value in bingo and some of the other services that we provide.
That's fantastic.
Eric,
Yeah,
sorry, I just want to jump in with Brian made a point about a younger demographic. Now more than ever, there's a younger demographic that wants to see more value out of whether it's the ticket price or their experience, and they want to be constantly doing things that a lot of folks don't just come and sit in their seat and watch the game. They want experiences. So the more we can do that, whether it's on the phone, in venue, I just think it shows that value, and people are going to keep coming back if they know they can see the full value in their experience. So that was my only point. Yeah.
And I think on that point too, Steve, that's why we look at it sort of, and I think John alluded to this earlier, is I think we all probably had a lot of sort of, tactical, one-off kinds of solutions over time that I think we're all sort of trying to figure out, how do we sort of consolidate these things into a much more sort of holistic digital strategy. And, we've moved to doing we've automated our scoreboard messaging, because we now see that not just as a great in-park thing and save a lot of time and effort, but also something we can now start to share at home as well. We're kind of automating relationships with companies that do photography, photos, and being able to place fans into the stands and do other kinds of unique kind of capabilities and things. We've got a great relationship in that one with a company called Photo Butler. And so, to me, I think we have to kind of, broaden our horizon about sort of how can we touch a fan and to Steve's point, kind of meet a fan where their needs are, because they all differ widely. I think all of our venues now have a little bit more meeting space than they used to, right? We try to carve out space, especially for younger demographics, I think, who want to kind of meet up somewhere in the park or, at a rink or something, without having to sort of be maybe in their seat, for the entire duration of the game and things like that. So I think those introduce opportunities for us to kind of touch those fans a little bit differently than we might have in the past.
Something I wanted to mention with bingo too is that there is a scores stats feed in place, so it all the results for the play outcomes are coming in automatically, And John, you like to refer to bingo as a result of that, and some of the other activations as an example of set it and forget it, as in it's not a heavy lift for teams, which I love.
Yeah, no, it's goes back to some of what Steve was talking about of making it, different experiences for different types of fans. There's a lot of talk, even in the previous sessions here today, about the precursor to gambling and that sort of thing. And, am I convinced that, real-time predictive is going to lead to more betting on in-game live events? Maybe. I don't know if we can truly say that. I know it's obviously one step closer to getting to somebody to make a real-time bet. If you can make them play a fun bingo game or make them play a real-time live predictive. But I don't necessarily think that translates into more dollars. We'll see in the coming years whether we're right or wrong on that, whether, the onset of mobile betting and in-game betting with all the different players involved, generates way more revenue than it used to, because it's just easier for more people to play along, or easier for everybody to throw down $2 on this, that, or the other. So, it still comes down to me to even what Brian was saying, is aggregating those audiences. Back in the day, you'd have an online experience, a mobile experience, an in-venue experience, a second screen broadcast experience. No, you just need one experience, and you better market it very well on every platform. And that, to me, is really the only way to aggregate those audiences and be successful in 2021 in a world of noise, right? Where there's so many different things. And if you can market one thing really well and make the user experience really good on every platform and drive it through the power of a live event, I think you will accomplish all those three simple little goals that are grow revenue, collect data, and grow audiences.
It's funny. I was thinking when you were saying that, John. I think all three of those things you just mentioned require something else, which I think is still evolving, which is almost like a gamification component to tie them together, right? So, I think if I had some of my kids in this room with me, they want to know where they are on a leaderboard. Like if they do a certain, if they attend, if they play a game that John offers, Steve offers, or they play bingo or they do something else, like they want to be rewarded with certain points that they can be leveraged for, in stadium opportunities or promotional giveaways and things like that. So I think there's that added challenge of how do we sort of collect all this data, sometimes from disparate sources.
That's a great point, Brian. Eric and I were chit-chatting about that too, how, prizing is always the last thing. And Steve, you met, in meetings we've had in the past too, we have a great interaction or a sponsored engagement in venue, and prizing is the last line item on the meeting agenda. Whereas if we could put some muscle behind the prizing and put some muscle behind the things that we're giving away, that incentive is invaluable to creating, the difference between a trip to Vegas and a signed puck is tremendous. So sometimes the littlest things that you can do really affect your promotion and the sponsorship and the audience you're trying to generate. That is huge. There's some things to consistency, but if you can, that goes to the $1 million shots going crazy on social or any of that stuff that happens. Setting yourself up with a platform like the Red Sox have done, and then tying it to a big payoff or even a little payoff like Brian's talking about, but the payoff has to be there to make it successful.
Yeah, and I want to get more to prizing, but let's just back up for a sec, because we wanted to get into a few beneath the surface level topics on interactive, now that it's becoming more common. It's been accelerating, right? As a result of the pandemic, more teams have been forced to go to mobile or interactive because, as Steve mentioned, it's been one of their only real methods besides social to engage with their fans and to fulfill sponsorship inventory. So I thought we could look no further than the recent PwC sports survey for 2020 and the outlook for 2021 in terms of guiding our discussion, because it's interesting, John and Brian, you mentioned gamification. John, you mentioned enhanced user experience. I mean, in terms of top revenue growth opportunities in the sports industry as measured by percentage of respondents, I mean, the top two really speak to these items, right? An enhanced digital media fan experience, which includes not just interactive but user experience across what you're creating, and that really means enhanced digital media fan experience. We want to engage more people as a result of that. We want to get more people participating. That's what enhancing that would result in. And then second, the creation and monetization of more digital assets. And what that means to me is, how can we do a better job of selling interactive to corporate partners. And I feel like I lost you there, guys, for a sec, but hopefully I'm still here. I want to improve. So I just want to highlight two insights that I can draw from this. One is if we improve the engagement from even 2.5% to 4.5%, we can grow the revenue by 2.5 times. And this is in the PwC outlook they had for 2021. And if we can increase the monetization of how many of our digital assets or inventory that we're able to sell from 10% to 60%, teams can grow it by 4 times. So that's what I wanted to really guide our discussion. First, to me, it comes down to, and Melissa, feel free to cut the screen share for a moment and we can just get into some of these topics. But you mentioned pricing, John. I mean, that's a huge driver. It's probably the number one driver of participation. But I'm just curious, I'll open this up to anyone. Are there any other strategies, or even if you think deeper in pricing, but are there strategies that you have adopted or you're looking to adopt that have been successful for you in increasing your fan participation on interactive or on your digital media experiences?
Yeah, I would. Steve, I don't know if you want to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, I still think we're a little bit early stage in those areas. I mean, we've always had sort of relatively fairly basic kind of giveaway opportunities. But I do feel that one of the benefits that all sports venues have is we have a lot of in-game opportunities, right? There's a lot of things that we make available to season ticket holders and others where you could create sort of a complementary versions of those for gamification winners and things like that. So I think the one thing we all enjoy without having to sort of create multi-million-dollar marketing budgets to cover giveaways is we have sort of unique opportunities with our players, our venue, attending a batting practice, being able to kind of tour areas of your venue that you might not normally have access to, other sort of things. So I think you can do a lot of those things without having to sort of break the bank a little bit. The at-home problem. So I think that but I suspect that, like all of you, we'll wind up expanding that, especially as we start to. I think what John said earlier, which is really important, is the tools are now available to do a lot of the things that we're talking about now. Like even within venue, like the content management systems to control like digital media are robust. We're doing some piloting with Triple Play, as one example, but now for the first time, you can actually sort of synchronize content. You can create unique things. You can create conditional content based upon the score of a game. You can, I can show sponsorship logos for certain things. I can, and things like that. So I think, we have the ability now to kind of drive, incremental revenue in places that historically were challenging or historically would have required a lot of labor costs that can now be done through automation. And I think John alluded to it. I think the challenge that we're all sort of probably growing into is how do you create a more sort of holistic experience? So maybe how do you complement it in the suites, and how do you complement your concourse, and what do you do on your menu boards, and how do you what do you do on your scoreboards, and what's on your display device, and all those things historically have kind of almost operated somewhat independently. And I think for us to get the full value of monetization, we need to kind of revisit how we kind of effectively do those things, especially on behalf of our sponsors and things.
Well, I certainly agree with you, Ryan, and I envision a day where, Steve's position is a conductor, of all screens at all times, and the community manager combined with live, combined with at home and second screen, and that experience is all being conducted by a really smart and creative person, and doing it in a fun, interesting way, so that it is worth, because we've got 50,000 people playing during a Red Sox broadcast, and it is worth putting $1 million down for the insurance for a prize around a big series with the Yankees or something. So that's the I agree with you. We're not there yet. We've been talking about it for 15 years, how we can aggregate platforms together. I think we're finally getting to the edge of the cliff, and this the pandemic, I think, is going to push us over, and the innovation is going to take off from here, because we need to we need to understand that all fans, no matter how they're consuming, want to interact and engage, and that is our new commodity.
Yeah, and Eric, just going back to incentivizing or pricing, I had one executive say to me one time, like, use your toolbox, and he alluded to himself as part of that toolbox. Use what you have at your disposal for pricing, for incentivizing, and for those following along who are at the club level, use what you have. Like, we'll often offer up, come up, and we have live pyrotechnics, fireballs when we score in our building. Come see the guy who launches the fireballs. That's a cool experience for people. Come up to our booth and see where the goal horn is. Spend time with our PA announcer. There's lots at your disposal from an experiential standpoint to utilize. When you get stuck in the conversations of, well, we don't have a budget for pricing, or we can't afford a signed jersey, or the client's not offering up pricing, think outside the box and think about those experiential things that you can work with your internal groups to create. And just secondly, to pricing, there's so many examples of pricing driving human behavior, and I'll use two, like our 50-50 jackpots as an example. That's just a cumulative total that's climbing, and it instantly makes human beings want to participate. And so there's one example. And then I'll use the golf tournament example. Every golf tournament you go to, what does everybody do? As soon as the prizes are done being awarded, they leave. Because if they've entered for a door prize, if they might have closest to the pin, they don't know if they've won it or not. Someone else might have beat them. That's like the universal signal that the golf tournament's over, is the prizing has been awarded. So it's real, and it exists. It might be subconscious for people, but I think it really drives behavior and drives participation.
I think Steve said something, Steve, I thought was really interesting, which is, it's creating these cool prizes, but it's also sort of, I think, like stimulating interest in the stadium. So when you get a break, being able to sort of say, hey, the winner of the XYZ was Mary Smith, and putting up on the board, so someone goes, oh, I'd like to play that game, or I'd be interested in that. And I think we're still kind of early stage in sort of tying things together sometimes. Like you might win on your little laptop or your mobile device, or your phone, but we don't always do the best job sometimes promoting these things, so that it creates this more viral effect where other people kind of want to sort of take it.
People like the glory. Like, why do you think in the racing sports industry, there's a podium for first, second, and third, all at different levels? People want that glory, so absolutely give it to them.
And those things are all bait. Right, like those are bait to get people onto their phones, to get you closer to creating a ticketing account for somebody that might not be holding out, or to to create a extra mobile order here or there, or any of those things. So, using engagement to drive adoption is really key.
And one more thing on pricing, and then a few other tactics I wanted to get to. But we have a partner of ours involved with FanX who is helping us introduce insured pricing to the digital or interactive space. So, like the McDonald's monopoly, or like John, your example of the penalty shot or the half court shot for a chance to win big, creating something similar to that, but for interactive or digital. I mean, Fortune 500 brands are already doing that, and we haven't seen a lot of it, I don't think, yet at the team level, but it's possible, it's doable, and so we're really looking forward to introduce that to the conversation. Just an example, if you think about a game, a 3x3 grid, so 9 tiles, and a fan has to uncover the 3 matching tiles. Well, that's a 1 in 84 probability that they'll do that, and basically there's insurance available to insure $100,000 of pricing for about 3.5% of that value. And so you're just, like you said, it's sort of the not quite the golf tournament, but it's just the showcase of here's all the things you can win. Not everyone might win. It's a probability based game, but it creates more excitement. Big pricing drives a lot of attention and engagement. So that's definitely something for teams to consider. John mentioned the trip for two. I mean, we have a case study with a client where they went from basically going a $50 or $100 gift card to one night they had their sponsor went all in and they did a trip for two to see the team play in an away city, and their engagement numbers went from like what you'd see 10-15% of their audience participating to 60%. And that prize was the only change in their how they executed that engagement. So it just goes to show the effect that pricing have. Now, I know we can't be going to give a trip for two away at all times, but one thing with engagement too, John, we mentioned this sort of arcade concept, and I referred to it in one of the Score 4 slides that Steve had, that first one, which is basically your interactive menu. It's all one window of access for fans to participate in all the interactive games or activations that you have going on. And John, maybe you could just touch on how that is benefiting or increasing the engagement collectively for all your interactive concepts.
Yeah, I mean, Brian knows this. This is the reason why you guys have partnered up, right? Is aggregating great experiences together always generates more audience. Check in to win leads to bingo, leads to Score 4, leads to the $1 million shootout. They're all connected in my mind. And when you have, you got to be able to market that in one location, and you need to be able to do that on social. You need to be able to do that on your website. You need to be able to do that in your app. You need to be able to make it really super easy for people to sign up. You need to be able to collect that data once they do, so that when they come back and play alternative games, it's easier. Like that is the holy grail of the digital ecosystem that we're getting really close to. And once we put those tools in everybody's hands at the teams and league levels, I think you're going to see that incremental lift of engagement, which is going to see the incremental lift of revenue, which then goes back into the cycle of data, and you do it all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful thing. And one more thing before I want to move on to sponsorship is only having the fan register once. Make it easy for them, like John was saying. I mean, Brian, you do a good job of that with bingo. Steve, we've implemented that with Score 4. I mean, every time you get the fan to do something, you're gonna lose some of them, right? And so
Yep.
Make it a one-time registration. Let them come back with ease. Don't prompt them for profile information each event or each time they go to play. Set up one-time registration.
Yeah, agreed. Simplification is the winner.
Yeah.
That is the word of the day: simplification.
Yeah, make it accessible, cast a wider net. Okay, so last discussion point for us is how best to sell interactive. John, I don't know if this is your quote or if you've taken this from your 22 years in sports, but I love it. You've said, sometimes when you're in on conversations about selling interactive or digital media in general, digital media inventory, you hear the best thing about interactive is that, or digital, is that it's measurable. But only in the next breath, the worst thing about digital is that it's measurable. How can we overcome that with selling interactive and digital media inventory?
Yeah, I mean, that's an oldie but a goodie. I think that sports is traditional sponsorship, right? And has been for a long time. It's about eyeballs, right? We sell eyeballs. We sell eyeballs based on signage. We sell eyeballs based on our broadcast numbers. We sell eyeballs based on how many butts we put in seats. It's an eyeballs based business, and digital is a complicated eyeballs business at lots of time. Would you, and your goals associated with each engagement, I think, change based on what you're trying to accomplish from an audience standpoint, right? If you're selling a sponsor, that like I mentioned before, that wants test drives, I want 200 people that are actually going to take the test drive, right? So you probably need to generate 10,000 people that would be through your interaction to create that good list of 200. But that doesn't mean that the overall media plan around that particular engagement isn't of value as well, because there was only 200 leads, or there's only 100 leads. Those 100 leads are very valuable. And when you're, like in the digital age today, getting that data to, or getting those opportunities in your sponsor's hands based on their goals, to me, is how you value digital. And signage is obviously still part of it. It's just, how do you grow that overall pie and make the things balance each other out? For so long, it's just been out of balance, in my opinion, as far as the media value goes. But now, we've basically taken away, in the pandemic, you've taken away 40,000 people that are part of that equation to value that sponsorship. How do you fill that hole? Well, we got to make the whole pie again.
Yeah, I would say sports as a consumable product, it's the only thing consumers buy and they don't know what they're getting. Purchase a ticket to a game, you could get a 6-0 win, you could get a 5-0 loss, you could get whatever. So with that in mind, that makes everything else harder to sell around that. So I guess one way we've tried to better our position when it comes to presenting to clients or partners is, if you have the resources and you've been empowered to do so, try and start doing this stuff on your own before it gets to the partner level. So if you believe in an idea and you strongly believe it's going to work and it's going to be good for your fan base and you're in a position to do it, just start doing it. Only then will you be able to have quantitative evidence and results to say, here's how it's working, here's what it looks like, here's how you could be involved. It's hard to pitch something that you don't know what it is, or how it looks, or how fans react to it, or how it fits within your game or within your digital gaming strategy until you do it, really. So that would be my one piece of advice.
Just wanted to pop up here for you, Steve. This is an example of just another activation that is sponsored. And Steve had mentioned, bringing in some playful language. Well, this is just a skill testing question for a check-in to win activation, essentially lotterizing a check-in. And they've done a great example of that. But then also the great alignment, right? Like, interactive allows a lot of customizability and aligning it around a particular brand. I mean, here you have basically a Canadian food courier who would be essentially an Uber Eats alternative in Canada. And what an opportunity for them to just, check into the game center and, oh, hey, drive them, all this hockey talk got you hungry, drive them to the Skip the Dishes app to order takeout. They're at home anyways, engaging with the game. That pairs well with delivery, right? And so it's a great fit between the partner and the activation or the event in this case. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And the skill testing question is really just silly. It's an opportunity to engage. The question's often redundant and obvious, but pointing back to trying to target or get into a demographic that maybe we haven't traditionally had success with. We believe that just the playfulness of it is something people enjoy, and they're certainly not checking in just to see what this stupid question is going to be. We're not naive to think that, but it just adds another layer of interaction and gives fans an easy thing to do, and hopefully they get a small chuckle out of it. So.
Yeah, what I think it's a really good example of I think you almost have to look at all your assets, your digital assets, and step back and take a look at them, whether it's in venue when you're looking at like scoreboards and digital menu boards and other digital forms of digital signage, or your mobile device, or your signage you may have around the ballpark. It's like, I think it's that kind of step into, or even like it could be something like a Wi-Fi landing page. All these things that there's a myriad of these things. They just have to be sort of aggregated on some level so you can have a thoughtful and aggregated and measurable. So you can have to Steve's point, have a thoughtful conversation with a sponsor, or, at least be able to kind of conjure up a strategy. I think the other thing that we're trying to get better at in our world is aligning the business and the technology folks so that the business folks kind of also know what our technology roadmap is over the next 2 years. Like, how far away is sort of doing some interesting form of augmented reality, or doing some other thing with virtual reality, or some other technology that might be somewhat nascent presently, so that they can sort of, understand how they can sort of sell in the future, or they can better kind of predict, to Steve's point, like, which type of sponsor would this be more appealing to, and things like that. I think up till now, I think it's, because we haven't either had the numbers or had sort of a thoughtful, holistic strategy. I think it's almost too easy for, I think, sometimes some of these things to be almost just thrown in as like a sweetener, with sort of existing sponsors and things. And I think those are great. And I think they probably add a lot of value where you might be struggling in certain cases with providing sort of the level of value. But I think going forward, it really is a holistic asset that, that is that's very, and by the way, I think it's good about it, that's very dependable and predictable, and measurable, John said good and bad sometimes, but, but so it puts a high premium on just the technology wherewithal to ensure that you're collecting all this. Because the other element we didn't say is optimally you're collecting it near real time where you can too, right? Because that near real time aspects can have other value as well.
Sell concepts, not assets.
Right.
And Brian, to that point, like our interactive gaming with the FanX platform has for so long been positioned as another in-game asset. And we're kind of now on the precipice of digital and interactive becoming its own lane within our partnerships program. It was, digital, web, in-game, and then everything else. Well, now kind of interactive or gaming is become its own lane. And I think if you can look at it in that kind of an approach, as opposed to just a throw in or that's a piece of inventory within our show, that'll guide some more success and hopefully more prominence amongst the executive and the folks out there selling, saying like, this is an important piece of the business now. It's not just let's see if they're interested in this, slide it across the table type.
I think the challenge we have is, I suspect, because I agree with Steve's point, is some of it's cultural. It's like we historically probably never thought of it quite like this way, right? So you could have one group doing tours and they don't, they're not plugged into your digital strategy, and you got another group doing something totally different, and they've kind of got their own particular agenda and things like that. And so I think for us, it's sort of like creating this mosaic in terms of how do we understand all of this holistically. So to Steve's point, I think it will become, ultimately sort of another, vertical, that well-defined vertical that will have its own, valuation.
You're seeing their own digital partnerships positions too, right? And so that's a great point. I do want to jump in. They might cut us off in 15 seconds here, but I really appreciate you all joining us. We should do same time next week and jump over to Clubhouse maybe, we'll do it again. So encourage anyone to come say hi at the FanX virtual booth. We'll be there and answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks to our esteemed panel for providing great insights. Enjoy the rest of the session, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, guys.